companies in the field look at the open source world, which is a great place to sort of explore. But we sort of said, hey, can we build our own AI engines, which can rest much closer to the problem and which our teams can sort of fine tune and adapt as we go along. So we created these AI engines, which are both genetically evolving. So they're continuously in evolution, and they're multi-strain deep learning approaches. So we don't create a single deep learning engine, we create multitudes of them. And each of them then approach the problem differently in terms of the variables they take, in terms of the depth of data they may take. And then the ones which are doing good sort of carry on, and the ones which are sort of not performing that well or not that optimized are sort of killed off. So this kind of approach really allowed us to sort of own our own engine and became a key differentiator as we went ahead. It allows us to be both an on-prem solution provider as well as an on-cloud provider. So we are not limited to saying to our clients that, oh, you need to be on cloud. It allowed us to be a company which can very finely tune its AI engine to different use cases and deploy it across use cases as well, rather than being someone who's gone very verticalized into AI. So as a company, we are focused on a fairly broad horizontal of AI solutions in the financial space, which include marketing, sentiment analysis, collections, credit scoring. And on customer engagement, again, we have a whole bunch of stuff going on, which is in app and web, kind of interactive avatars. We're doing some stuff on messaging, on contact centers, as well as using a lot of interesting stuff in the bank branch itself as well. So let me talk to you a little bit about what we do in the decisioning side. One of the things we are core focused on is sort of pulling massive amounts of data. Banks and financial institutions typically have a lot of siloed data in different silos. We are able to pull that data from these different silos, whether on-prem or on cloud, and then push out predictions and decisions and constantly learn from the feedback of that. So how does that work in the real world? For one of the banks in the North American region, we were predicting what's the next best product to upsell or cross-sell to a customer. And here what we did was we really took a whole bunch of data, which is transaction data, customer demographic data, behavioral data in terms of how they're using net banking, etc. And we put it into our deep learning AI engine, which I talked a little bit about earlier. And then we made three key predictions. We made what is the right time to reach out to a customer with a marketing message? What is the right channel, whether it be email, web, SMS, app, an AI-based phone call, or in the branch? And what is the product that message, that channel, and that message should have? So using all these three decisions, we were able to do a bunch of stuff for the customer. We were able to predict whether we should upsell something to this customer, what is that product we should upsell, whether there's a chance of this customer being lost to us, and whether churning out, and how we can retain him. And the third thing we were trying to predict for was, is there just a service action we need to take? Maybe the customer is not onboarded on net banking, or he's not yet using the mobile app. Or can we acquire that customer into these interesting channels, etc.? And the results were quite spectacular. This was something we did in collaboration with MasterCard. We've generated over $12 million worth, almost $12 million worth of sales for this. It's an end-to-end process for this particular bank. And it's something where the engine is constantly learning and adapting to make these three key predictions for this particular institution. Another one was very interesting, was on the contracting side, wherein we use text and sentiment analysis in a combination to understand what kind of contracts the bank is signing and analyze the content, detect any kind of forbidden words, policy breakthroughs in these contracts, and make the whole contracting process much quicker and easier on that side. The next one is one of our lead case studies. It's something we've done wherein we've used an AI engine to use non-specific AI data points to make predictions of who shall default on a loan. So the system learns from that bank's data in terms of past defaults, etc., and then predicts for the future in terms of saying, hey, if you're issuing a loan to somebody, this is the probability of default. And what was really interesting was we were able to increase the lending base of this particular institution by about 23%. So they were lending about 23% more, but at the same time, they were facing 64% less defaults. So It was a win-win in terms of more lending and less defaults. This study has now been done over a fairly long period of time. And in the industry, there's something called the ROC score, which our AI is very strong at. It's 0.8 versus the industry average at about a 0.6 kind of scenario, which is on the Gini coefficient. Now, I've talked to you a lot about on the decisioning side, wherein whether it be credit, whether it be marketing, upsell, cross-sell, or whether it be just contracting, how we've had. Now, coming to the more interesting and fun side of our solutions, we've done a whole bunch of stuff with AI avatars. One of the first AI avatars that we did was a Warren Buffett, wherein you could speak to Warren and Warren could speak back to you. It was an AI avatar, and it was a really interesting conversation that anyone could have real time with Warren himself. And it got a lot of coverage. It was covered by CBS, by Fox, etc. And what it did was it actually created a visual element rather than just being text or voice. It went beyond and created a visual element of talking to somebody. And this was for the 100-year anniversary of Forbes. So it created an atmosphere where anyone felt that instead of a simple journalist interviewing Warren, you yourself could interview Warren and ask him the questions that you always wanted to ask. So it was something that was really interesting in terms of what was done there. And what we've done now with these AI avatars is obviously we've used them as banking AI assistants. So we have put them on top. If you can see the lady in red on the screenshot, we put them on top of existing AI, on existing mobile apps, websites, etc. And these avatars can then converse with you, with the customer, and then they can do literally anything, right from applying for a new loan to maybe just checking the last 20 transactions. It's all possible on these kind of AI avatars as such. And so we've done over 16.3 million users, about 50 million conversations now, and we're supporting about 80 million, about 80 different languages in 80 different countries. There is a video out here, but I'm conscious that I think it will buffer. So there are YouTube links. I'll probably share the deck with the team, and then you guys can check out these videos, which actually show these solutions actually, wherein these avatars are actually talking to users and they're talking back. And what we've heard back from banks is that it's really interesting because banking is seen as more of a task or something you just need to complete. But with these avatars, there's a kind of interactiveness that comes into that experience. There's a human element. People always say, "Oh, I don't want to use a automated IVR, etc." Here, we are trying to humanize that support, that marketing element, using these avatars as much as possible. So this is on that side. The second solution I wanted to talk to you a little bit about was on the branch transformation side. Here, what we've done is we've created AI branches, completely people-less bank branches for the likes of Bank of America, wherein anyone can walk into these branches and there's no staff at all in them. And then we have an AI avatar up on screen who you interact with using gestures and voice. And she can issue you a new mortgage. She can talk to you about your savings account. She can enable any kind of transaction that you want to do, more from a sales and support side as well, right there and then. And we're also now building in facial recognition into this. So as soon as you walk in, your authentication can be done right from your face itself, and we can know who you are. So again, a really powerful solution. We've been launching it across different banks. In fact, here closer home, we've done a slightly different version for HDFC Bank, where we launched this in 5 cities. And if you visit the Churni Road branch or you visit the Powai branch, you can actually see this solution live and working, wherein there's an AI avatar assistant who welcomes you in the branch and can have conversations. And we've done it across different form factors. So these are some of the kiosks, etc. We've even done it on tablets. One of the most recent cool things that we're working on, and if any of you ever come over to our office post the lockdown, we'd love to show you a robot on wheels, which can actually walk around on wheels and can guide people through the branch as well. So that's a new technology. It's still in alpha at our end, but we're working on putting the brains of our AI avatars into this robot to enable a very different kind of experience, wherein these robots can actually not only be present in the branch, but actually can walk you through the bank branch as well. Coming to something that I think almost all of you have been exposed to and been seeing in the past is the AI. It's the chatbots, essentially the bots. We are doing them across different channels, which is WhatsApp, Facebook, email, SMS, web-based as well. So one of the key unique points about our AI avatars have been is that it's a multi-channel AI avatar. So obviously you can, if you visit the bank's website or app, you can have conversations with it. But if you come to channels such as WhatsApp, etc., you can have text-based conversations. And we're trying to maintain the same kind of momentum in terms of the information share. So you drop off a conversation at one particular bot, you can carry it forward on another one of ours, which can be any of the avatars, or even on the in-branch solution as such. Finally, I think we've also now launched the call bots. Now, what we feel with the call bots is very important is that these are bots which can, you can speak to them, they can speak back to you. They're integrated with the existing phone numbers of the user itself, so of the bank itself. So you can actually have conversations both incoming and outgoing. And again, I'll share with you an actual phone call that the engine has taken place. These are human-like. They are able to handle about 80 to 85% of the conversations, and then allow the bank staff to focus on more key customers, more marketing and sales, rather than on the day-to-day service-oriented requests, which may be as simple as updating a password or generating a new PIN, those kind of things. These phone call bots can handle. So, these are some of the other solutions. Obviously, we have been working on this stuff around NPS. We've also been doing an interesting lot of stuff on the online e-commerce integrations, wherein we're working on POS machines as well. So that's not just in e-commerce, but in regular commerce as well, wherein an avatar can be on top of a POS machine and you can have an interaction with our AI agents. So at this stage, I think, yes, I'd happy to take questions. If anyone wants to know a little bit more about any particular solution or how we really went about them, happy to answer anything that you may want to know.
So Raghav, I think we have 3 questions in the chat room. Can you just can you look it? Can you? So the first question is on COVID-19. So the question is, do you think with the COVID you could come up with the solution for SMEs?
I'm sorry, I missed the last part. Your audio just went out.
Yeah, it's in the chat room.
Yes, I'm just. Okay, I got it. Yeah, so the question is, do you think with COVID you could come with credit scoring and decisioning for SMEs, especially with capital and funding issues? Yeah, I think it's an interesting sort of place to be, right? Because the traditional data sources, which is your credit bureau score, etc., or your tax filings or GST, all of these are going to be affected because the sales that the SMEs do or the kind of business that they do right now is just locked down. So I think using our AI engines, we could looking at finer factors or softer factors within these businesses where we could absorb a lot more, about those kind of granular details, which maybe a traditional analytics engine or AI engine, analytics engine would miss out on. The AI could take forward. And I'll give you an example that we've come across in the past. It's from the retail banking side, but very interesting anyway. So there was, for one of the particular banks, we were predicting the propensity for looking at the customer buying different products. And our AI engine became really good at predicting. There's a product called reverse mortgage. So reverse mortgage is basically when maybe you have a house and you mortgage it to the bank gives you the money, and then at the end of the life the bank takes over the house, and then it's sort of a loan against the house, but which ends when you pass away. So you don't lose your house till you pass away. So it's a product very popular in the Western economies. So the bank became really good at predicting which customers will take this product. And when we sort of really opened the black box and saw why it was doing this, it was taking one field, which was the date of updation of the nominee. Now that field, if you look at a traditional analytics point of view, you would say date of updation of nominee is a fairly random field or doesn't have much value. But because the system is looking at this kind of a small micro field, which is date of updation of nominee, we were able to figure out, at least the system was able to figure out that, okay, customers are updating their nominee when typically their spouse may have passed away. Typically your nominee is your spouse, the spouse has passed away, you update the nominee to your children, etc. In this particular bank scenario. And there's a good propensity that if you don't want to pass on the house to them, the reverse mortgage product looks a little more interesting, looks something that maybe you would want to go for. So that kind of a small data field leading to this kind of value is all what our AI engines can do. And I think with the kind of the traditional data fields which the bureaus used, are going to be affected, at least for the next 3 months, the kind of turnover, the kind of flow of cash to a lot of these SMEs. And I think then an AI engine which looks at these smaller fields or more interesting fields could really be a differentiator for banks who want to lend to SMEs right now and lend in a way that their defaults don't go up significantly. So, is there any follow-up on that, or should I move to the next question?
You can move to the next question.
So the next question is from Raghav Rao. It talks about, does the client prove you with the analytics that are required, or do you propose to them? So I'm not very clear on the question, but let me answer it from 1 to 2 perspectives. I think in terms of if you're talking about the use case, do we sort of reach out to clients and actively say what are the use cases, and then they decide, or is it something they come to us with? It's a mix. There are customers who will come and tell us that, yes, I'm very interested in a credit use case, or I'm very interested in a peopleless bank branch use case, and then we sort of go from there. But there's an equal number of customers who come to us and said that, why don't you tell us what are your capabilities, and then we'll sort of explore the ones we find more interesting. In terms of analytics as such, the data itself, we try to work with raw data as far as possible. So if you're taking up a use case, we tell our financial institution, our clients, to provide us as much of the raw data as possible, because that's what we feel gives us the best throughput into our AI engine. We don't try to work on top of existing analytics frameworks. We'd rather look at the raw data and then let our engine do the pre-processing and the vectorization to move that forward. The next question is just a second. I think I'm getting right. The next question was around I think. Since your deep learning algorithms crawl multiple SM handles, social media handles, emails, and telephone calls, where do you draw the line on privacy? And this question is from Krishna Kumar. So yes, I think privacy is a very important part of where where the AI engine draws its line. I think for us as a company, because we have our own proprietary AI algorithm and a lot of it runs on premise, we actually let our customers say that where do they want to access the data. So a lot of the times we are not even focused much on social media data as such, or data where we don't have access to, because there is a wealth of data inside most financial institutions, because of the length of transaction data, the length of time they're interacting with, that we don't even go beyond that, because the accuracy of the engine itself is fairly high, even if we use limited data. Having said that, there are scenarios where we need to go beyond. And at that point of time, we typically look at a user-based verification and authentication to let the user validate that, yes, we're going to be pulling some of this data, and is he comfortable in us pulling that data or not? So at that point in time, then it becomes a decision to the user. Obviously, the reason we're pulling that data is either to provide him a loan or a product or a service from the bank, or be to improve an existing service or product. So then it's a decision we leave to the user to say, okay, yes, there is going to be some pull of certain data. Is he okay with that? Then we proceed. If he's not, then we proceed only with the data we have access to and we leave the rest.
Raghav,
Um,
I think you are facing another laptop. You can just look in this laptop and answer the questions.
oh yeah, sure, sure. Yeah, actually, I'm using one to see the questions and one for my video and audio. But sure, I'll make it a point to look into only this one. Um, okay, I think the next question is from Raghav Rao. Any use cases in healthcare? So I think as a company, we've not dwelled too much in the healthcare space. We've done some work on healthcare marketing and sales. So we've done a lot of these AI avatars which talk about, and bots which assist people with skincare, which assist people in understanding their own, diagnosing their own health issues and health problems. That's been an increasing focus area that we've seen a lot of both the healthcare product companies, which I'm talking about, which may be pharma or cosmetics companies, and then healthcare services companies such as hospitals, etc. Use. So we've seen a lot of work on the bot side. Core healthcare, which would be, I would say, which would be more focused on maybe diagnostics and things like that, has not really been much of a focus area for us. I think they're very specialized companies which have sort of then gone very deep in this field. So that's something that we have not been too exposed to. Um, I think the next question is from Tapas Gupta. Uh, does your company also work with startups with a suitable pricing model for startups? Yeah, so I think, yes, we've been working increasingly a lot with startups. We have been enabling pay-as-you-go models. Has been something that's worked very well, wherein the startup is not having to pay too much upfront, but as they scale and as they use the service and as they grow, we can be partners in that growth, and that has been something that has worked. Obviously, our focus has always been the larger enterprises, but over the last year or so, we have seen these opportunities come up with startups, and selectively, where we feel we can add a lot of value to the company and to the product, we have developed pay-as-you-go models wherein the upfront expenditure not being much, the startups have been able to work with us to scale certain products. I think, especially on the bot side, there have been a lot of interest from the startup community in using our tech, and that's something we've been able to enable a lot of the smaller companies to utilize at a fairly low cost. The next question is, what is our team size? So our team size is about 65 people, 65 to 70 people is our current team size. Again, this is across geographies, so we are in about 5 countries. The next question is from I think it's from, forgive me if I'm pronouncing it wrong, it's from Din Karsuri. Which are the areas where AI has not yet been able to penetrate? So obviously, I think it's a continuum, right? There are areas wherein AI will penetrate over a period of time. I think almost every area, every business, every sector is going to have some elements of AI. You know, in its business, there is going to be some usage of AI someplace. It's just a continuum in terms of seeing that how much and how far. I think when we look at it as a company, at least our experience has been that banking, finance, to a larger extent, even retail and telcos, these companies have a huge amount of data and maturity right now, and are in fact some of the first users of AI. But having said that, even companies in the manufacturing space and using IoT being the database, being the data source, are now sort of picking up the game on AI. Healthcare is another area where we're seeing a lot of traction. So I wouldn't say that AI will not be able to penetrate any particular area. But yes, if I would say there are certain areas such as BFSI, telecom, etc., where AI is a little more ahead than other industries. The The next question is from Neha Talreja, and her question is, for a new startup before rolling out AI, can AI help in determining the pathway forward in terms of product pricing, customer base? Yeah, this is a very good question. In fact, we get asked this several times, that can AI assist in predicting um, market size, and can it help in pricing kind of decisions? And I think the answer is a bit of a wedge. I don't think so. AI can do it for you right off the bat, because you got to understand that one of the core raw materials for any AI decision is data. And because you're a startup, you're entering a new field or sector, AI would not have the real data from your customers or your industry sector. It could probably summarize secondary reports or what's already there in the public domain and synthesize a summary for you, or synthesize some sort of guide for you. But what I would suggest most startups do is that, rather than using AI as a tool in the planning phase, to embed AI once you launch, to have a lot of AI wherein once your customers are using your product or service, once there is customer interaction, to put in certain, and if your product is a digital product, it's even easier to put in measures wherein the system is constantly learning from the customer's usage of your solution, the customer's payment patterns, etc., for your solution, and then to sort of look at that and constantly adapt. I think one of the easiest areas for startups to sort of apply AI in the beginning is a lot on the customer communication side, especially on the service side. You can automate a lot of that, simple FAQs, ticket raising, etc., and give your end customer a better experience by just launching a few bots, etc. And you can also do a lot of work on customer feedback using an AI NPS engine, which will help you filter out the kind of feedback you're getting, not only on your direct email communication or direct communication from the customer, but on social media, etc., as well. All right. The next question is again from Raghav. What is your pricing model, and can you share revenue numbers? So our pricing models have been fairly extensive. Because we are a fairly wide company, and I walked you through some of our solutions for the financial space. We have pricing models which have our traditional software base, wherein it's a one-time fee, and then there's an EMC from the second year onwards. We have models where it's a yearly subscription, wherein the customer purchases a certain subscription and the AI keeps learning and we keep charging. We have decision-based models where we charge per decision. So that's another interesting way of looking at it, wherein every decision is charged, and then we try to work out a metric wherein the value of each decision we sort of give to the customer, and then can they sort of share with us in the kind of value creation that REI does for them. Okay, then I think the next question is, what technologies do you use for AI? So I think I've touched upon that a little earlier. We use deep learning. We use that in combination with our own deep learning AI engine, which has a spin on genetically evolved. It's a genetically evolving deep learning AI. So it's a multi-model deep learning AI, wherein we can switch between models as and when required. And it's a proprietary model, so it allows us to run both on cloud as well as on-prem. The next question is from Patrick, and that's how do you generate your business leads? So I think what we do with our business leads is we generate a lot of that. A lot of it is inbound, customers actually reaching out to us and having conversations with us about products. And there's obviously a whole lot of content that we have in the public domain, which people are able to access and then reach out to us. And another aspect of it is obviously our existing customers and the references from them as well. And thirdly is obviously our international teams. We do have sales folks who are members of these teams, who then talk to customers at different forums, reach out actively to customers as well in some cases to explore opportunities. The next question is from Suresh. if you're offering similar products to say banking space, where is the USP for an individual customer bank? Yeah, so yes, I think a lot of times people ask this, right? That if all the different banks or competing banks are going to use your AI solution, how do you differentiate, or how do you give power? How do you enable each bank to sort of do better? And I think this comes back to our genetically evolving AI engine. Unlike other companies, we are not verticalized. And one thing we do is that we follow a policy wherein the data that our AI learns from a particular institution is not shared with our core AI engine. So each bank, each implementation that we do, the engine is learning from the data that that particular bank has, that particular financial institution has, and we're not sharing it across some sort of master AI. So unlike other companies who say, yes, there's one master AI which is learning, and then the bank is always concerned, right? Because they said, we taught this AI on our engine, but the next bank who comes along and uses this will have the benefit of that. We've not done that as a company. We've sort of looked at it differently by saying that each bank, when we train their AI engine, that particular model, that trained AI model, becomes part of that bank's ecosystem and environment, and it doesn't come back to us. So while it's harder for us because obviously we would benefit from that data learning, uh, we believe that that's the right way of doing business, because each bank is then benefited only from its own data rather than across pollination of data. So that's why each bank then has its own journey depending on the data they provide us. The next question is from Kunal Thakkar. Can the AI engine process price data and give us statistical probabilities of price for a particular commodity moving by X? Basically, like an algo that will process pricing data and make a decision to buy or sell. Yeah, so this is a very interesting question. In fact, we do have an AI engine which does proprietary AI trading for us. It does it both on the commodities market as well as on the stock market. Very similar to what you're saying. We've trained it on about 10 years worth of data. It takes positions, closes them on its own, and it's been doing fairly well. It's not something we've exposed to the outside world. I think our focus has been just to test it ourselves. We've been using it for the last 2.5 years with quite a bit of success. And I think definitely, I think pricing prediction is something that AI systems can do. The only challenge is obviously black swan events. We are in one black swan event right now. What happens in black swan events is liquidity dries up. So you got to be careful, because these systems do take positions which may become illiquid, and then you may not be able to profit from them. The next question is from Shashank. In terms of, and I think, okay, Rab has said that this is the last question. So I'm an AI aspirant. How do you decide on accuracy? So in terms of AI accuracy, I think it's defined by each problem set differently, right? In terms of bots, you would look at the kind of feedback you're getting from customers. You typically have some sort of feedback screen at the end. In terms of our avatars and the voice side of things, we look at the number of transactions completed, the number of times people look at, have to repeat themselves vis-a-vis the number of times people change an intent. So that means, let's say you were asking for a pin change, the AI misunderstood it to be that you've lost your card, and then you said, no, I didn't mean lost my card. I just wanted the pin to be changed. I forgot my pin. So then we look at those kind of intent change scenarios, wherein how many times did the user have to change the intent completely. So the metric typically of accuracy is dependent on the AI problem itself. There is no one specific metric where I would say this is an accuracy metric. Obviously, if you go technical, you could look at false positives. You could look at uh, all sorts of different measures that come up in this, like precision, etc. But I think you got to, if you're looking at it from a business angle, you got to look at it more wholesomely in terms of saying what's possible, what kind of value is being achieved by the end customer, etc. So, moderators, are we taking any more questions, or should we?
I think we should stop here because we have to start another session. Thank you so much, Raghav, for taking this session. It was great listening to you. So I'm going to start with the second session. Ajinkya Kole, who's been working with Google for past 2 years. Ajinkya, over to you. I'll unmute you and you can start the session. Ajinkya,
Am I audible now?
yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. So let me just start. So is my screen visible from the side there?
Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. So let's just begin. The topic which I have in mind is AI for business. But in my opinion, there are actually the most two common buzzwords in the world currently. One, business, and two, AI. So what I want to do is, like, instead of repeating the same things which have always been repeated, I want to, put a bit of different spin on it and see how we can actually go into the hood, under the hood, and see how is it different and what can actually AI do and it cannot do. Okay. So let me give a bit of introduction. My name is Ajinkya. I work as a data and machine learning instructor at Google. But before that, I started as a software developer. So I've done the software development, legacy, monolith applications, whether it is on cloud computing or on servers, and then shifting to the whole completely different world of data analytics, AI, and teaching. So, but more than this, it's like I like to identify myself more as a someone who loves to read, someone who loves to write. It's like I'm such an obsessive reader that I've given a TEDx talk on it. You can find it on my LinkedIn. But you see, point here is the reason I'm taking this is I want to identify myself more as a think tank type of a guy. So more than simply thinking about how to do stuff, I would spend time figuring out what's the best way to do stuff. So somebody who is kind of like taking a look at the problem, taking a look at different ways it could be solved, instead of simply following the trend, which has what the society has become. I mean, when the COVID started, everything was like, COVID simulation. Everybody is going to create a COVID dashboard. Before that, everybody would create, some kind of same kind of like OCR based on image recognition or something. So it's all trend thing. I like try to look beyond it. And that is what I'm trying to cover in this session, wherein me acting as a Morpheus, I'm going to simply open a different perspective. That's it. It might not be pretty hands-on, but it's going to be a different perspective. So going to the perspective which I mainly want to offer is this. We all look at success stories, and what we don't look at is the failure stories. So this is nothing but survivor bias, wherein a guy like Mark Zuckerberg or somebody whose company succeeded, nobody takes a look at anybody else who was doing the same thing at the same time, maybe in a better way, but they failed. So there are lots of reasons for success and lots of reasons for failures, and taking a look at them is pretty useful. So Y Combinator is a pretty popular startup incubator. And if you go to this website, yclist.com, on this website, what you'll find is it has a list of all the startups which have been gone through this Y Combinator. So there are some other sites on it which tell how many of them got funding, how many of them were actually seed funded, and how much funding did they get. And getting all the details, you can get those details from here. But if you take a look at how many survived, the number of companies which survive and thrive, their number is pretty less. It's like it said that around 99% of startups fail. And why they fail? The luck is a major chance, but there is one more factor, which is like maybe not trying to solve the right problem. So once you're trying to solve the right problem in a right way, at the right time, maybe, then luck comes into picture. So if you are actually solving the wrong problem, even if it is the right time, even if it is the right technology, even if it is the using right approach, it's not going to matter even if you get lucky. So luck does play a role, but if you do the problem analysis, if you do the let's say target audience analysis, then only that matters. So this is what I kind of like want to show. Even a company like, let's say, Google, there is this website called as Google Cemetery. You'll find out even a company like Google, there is like these many products have actually been stopped by Google. So around 200 acquisitions, around 166 products which have been retired. So different products, libraries, hardwares, different combination. You can take a look at, some of the products have been pretty good, but still they were retired. Maybe not a right business fit, maybe not the right time, maybe different priorities. There are lots of possible options. This is what we also can do. Anybody who is learning AI, or anybody who is into business, anybody who is a startup founder, or anybody who is an entrepreneur, instead of simply thinking about trying to solve the next problem, if we can think about the problem, that gives you a perspective which is much richer than simply rushing into solving the problem. So whenever things are rosy, whenever things are going great, everything looks like this. AI is what AI was this unicorn when it was sold as a magic pill to all the problems, And in this gold rush of everybody jumping on this bandwagon, that's when the things hype cycle actually overblew out of proportion, and many of the companies became unicorn status, but they couldn't really meet the expectations. If you are aiming for a moderate success or even phenomenal success, you have to ensure that you are realistic here. So that's what I'm trying to say. So there is a difference. There is a huge difference between the problem and a feature, and this is what is the most common confusion which I see. AI can be used to solve a feature, to add a feature. Whereas AI can't be, I have this problem and the whole problem will be solved by AI. That's not how it works. You have to really be specific. You have to really identify a general big case scenario. And in this big problem scenario, we have to take a look at what are the features which are part of that problem, and which one will I solve with help of AI. So let me go a bit ahead. Let me go into the details of the problem and stuff like this. So let's talk about problem. So I've already mentioned this. In this enthusiasm to solve the problem, we don't really spend time on thinking about the problem. It's like if we make a snap judgment, okay, this is the problem to be solved, and this is how it has to be solved, then that itself causes a big that itself causes a bias which is like pretty bad. So we want to we want to make a conscious decision to actually work on it in a conscious manner. So for example, these are the companies which are leading all the AI. So whenever we read all the news, right? So whether it is like big fancy AI capabilities which comes into picture, the culprit is mostly these companies. So the reason I say culprit is because they are big. So they are actually research companies, and because they are huge research companies with lots of money, their approach of problem solving is very different from other prop companies which are simply, let's say, trying to solve a business problem. So if I have a business problem, in that scenario, I have to know that I am not actually a big company where I have infinite money to throw at it, or I am not actually solving a research problem. I'm not focused on the research. I'm focused on the problem. I'm focused on the solution of the problem. And that is why I should be studying not the companies which are doing the research, but companies which are actually solving a problem with help of AI. And I find Netflix is doing that pretty well. So Netflix was the first company which did recommendation. That was back in 2008 or 2006-ish. The recommendation, and even now, Netflix is like heavily influenced by quality of the recommendation engine they have created. But you see, it goes much beyond that. Actually getting the context and the information of, let's say, users, Netflix can actually create, Netflix creates lots of custom TV shows. And who is their target audience? What's their target? How should they target them? How maybe an episode should be directed? Maybe acting, casting choice, maybe the director choice. Some of those decisions are actually influenced by AI now. And in time, they will be influenced more and more and more with help of AI. So this is actually a good example of AI being applied to business. It's not a research problem here, but it has a final end point in mind, which is impacting the business. Amazon did the same thing. Amazon did the same thing for their entire retail thing which is happening. Amazon did that perfectly well. So when I say business, we should actually be focusing on business, and only that then it ensures that we are actually on the right track. If we are not focusing on the business, then we are digressing. So this is the kind of part I had, is when we think about AI for business, we have to think about the three pillars. Pillar number one, which is data. Pillar number two is the technology with which we will solve the data. So right now it is AI and cloud. So whether it is call center, NLP, OCR, whatever it may be, because of internet, the data has become ubiquitous. Because of geo, internet has become mass enabled. Because of cloud computing and AI. So this is a good time because these two pillars are mature. So when I combine that, both of them, to add value to a business I choose or a business I am in, that's when AI is going to impact the business. I'm not thinking as a researcher. I'm not thinking as a researcher. Rather, this is a problem solver. So not as a researcher, but as a problem solver. That's it. So for that, we need to change our point of view. So few of the key points for it towards the mindset which we should have before we start implementing in the right way is this. Point number one is, I don't know how many people have seen this movie, but it's a pretty nice movie called as Ratatouille. So in this movie, this rat, he knows how to cook. This cook, he doesn't know how to cook. So how does the rat teach the human to cook? Is like he actually hides him in the chef hat, so it's like chef hat, like he wears the chef hat, and then the rat, using the hair, he controls the cook, human cook. So this is exactly how it is right now. The only difference is it's the AI and we are the humans. So if I have, let's say, a financial analyst or a doctor who has been created, let's say, replaced by an AI, we think that the human is simply there to kind of like simply follow all the decision made by the AI. But that's not how it is. AI's aim is to augment our thinking, not automate. So if you see movie Iron Man, in Iron Man movies, it's the Iron Man who is driving all the innovation. Jarvis is simply running the simulations. The part of the thinking, critical thinking, creativity, imagination, strategy, maybe deciding what problem to solve, maybe all of these things, that's completely driven by Iron Man. The person who is doing the grunt work is Jarvis. So whereas in general, the way businesses treat, it's the whole importance is given to the Jarvis part. And it feels like the AI is going to do everything. That's not how it is. We are not there yet, and we won't be there yet for at least 10 years. So we have to be extremely realistic about capabilities of AI and the importance of humans in AI. That's why if you read this book called as Humans Are Underrated, it's a great book about this thing, wherein it talks about not what AI can do, it talks about what only humans can do. And how does it play into our this approach towards this automation? This is a pretty good sobering picture, which opens our eyes. So anyways, so keeping in mind, AI is to augment, AI is not to automate. That's the first point. Second point, simply blindly using AI is not the solution. If there are lots of complexity, whether complexity is like data availability, having the labeled data, if is the data right or not, is the pattern still valid or not, has some new trend changed things completely. With the corona thing, all the consumer behavior and everything has changed. simply applying the old recommendation in this new scenario is not the most effective approach. But there is not enough data in this this thing of this how things change in this corona thing to actually have a model for this specific epidemic. So you see, there are AI is not just a magic pill. It has to be applied correctly. So use AI to solve the right problem. It's very essential. Right now, at some point, there it would have been a problem worth millions of dollars. OCR, translation, speech to text. Even right now, if in Zoom, I don't know whether the captions is there, but if it had been a hangout call, speech to text is an already solved problem. It doesn't matter which language, more than hundreds of languages have been supported, and live speech to text transcription is available at extremely cheap cost. So AI has made lots of impossible problems trivial, but we are still not at a place where we are using this trivial problems effectively. So the problem I have in the way solutions are currently being implemented is everyone is not being considerate in the exact kind of problem they're trying to solve and the way they're trying to solve the problem. I'll elaborate that with an example, but you see, my point was, even though the solutions are trivial now, we should have a product which is using these solutions to, let's say, add value to me as a user or a consumer. And there is upcoming projects. It's like, currently the possible solution is possible, but not trivial. And that's the new age of problem solving. So trivial solutions, we are still not solved that yet. So if we, talk about things which could be possible, let's say driverless cars or something, how do we go about that? That's a even more complex problem. We're still not there. So that's the point number 2. Point number 3 is profit. So everything in the world is either to make money or save money. So if I am not optimizing a metric for my business, then what's the point of AI? My ROI, my return on the investment of AI, the investment is going to be in manpower, in data, whatever things I'll do, whether it is hiring, whatever it may be. If the ROI by not using AI is higher, I will not use AI. So this is what is very important, where we are realistic and we are practical. So that's the point number 3. And this is like this report, which is like State of AI Divergence in 2019. This is a pretty good report. It says only 40% of startups use AI, which is directly aiding their business, directly or maybe indirectly as well. Rest of them, it just looks like a fluff piece, maybe a marketing strategy, maybe something because everybody was demanding we do some AI or something. So it was not aligned towards big picture of the business. That's a big mistake. Fourth point is whenever I'm, let's say, developing a product, one common mistake everyone is doing is targeting mass. So burger by McDonald's present everywhere, definitely, but it's a mass targeting. So if I develop a solution for masses, there is a lots of money possible, and that's why there is a rush of companies for targeting mass, whether it is education technology or whether it is anything else. So all the startup ecosystem runs behind targeting mass. What nobody tries to target is have a specific subset of audience, a segment. So on the right hand side, this is Lebanese food, so pita bread and hummus. So amazing food. You won't find hundreds of restaurants in Mumbai for this. You'll find maybe 20, but all of them, if they have good food, they will be busy. It will be a profitable chain. It will be a profitable chain all over the India. There won't be kind of like one shop in every alleyway like CCD or Starbucks, but it is a profitable target audience nevertheless. So similarly, when I'm using AI to solve a problem, I should not constrain myself by simply saying that I am only going to target the masses. No, that's a mistake. So then this is the kind of like problem statement here, wherein I have a problem, I have a target audience. So the target audience, whether it was mass or it was a segment, a specific segment, depends. So I have a problem, I have a target, I have a product which is solving the problem. So the problem needs to be solved. And there are features. So problems and there are features. I said there is a difference between feature versus problem. So a product could be solving multiple problems. A product could have multiple features. A feature could be implemented using AI. So AI doesn't come at a generic level of product. AI doesn't come at a generic level of problem as well. AI comes at a implementation level. And to have a complete end-to-end profitable solution, we also have to think about the packaging of the product, which is the UX. So the user interface and how the AI kind of like makes it possible to use the product well. So I have seen these mistakes which are common, wherein lots of pop-ups, which are showcasing AI capabilities. No need to do that. No need to go out of the way to bring into notice, how AI is flashy and how I have done AI. No need. No need to make things unnecessarily complex. Simply solve a major problem. Simply solve the main problem. Instead of going into feature creep and going on to infinite possible features which are possible, simply focus on one problem or subset of problems. That should be more than enough. That is more than enough for in most cases. So that's the kind of like one of the final shifts. So kind of like to summarize the main point is like when we talk about AI, we have to be realistic, which is an AI problem, which is not an AI problem. AI is to augment our intelligence, not to automate our. And then AI has to add value without any profit, without any realistic way of, let's say, possibility of an AI solution. It's not the right thing to start. And then without having a target audience, it's also a wrong problem to have. And once we have all four, then we think about the complete solution, which involves the problem, target audience, the product, and UX. So these are kind of like all pillars so that when we are using AI in business, the business benefits from AI. You see, the business should benefit from AI, not simply be hindered by it. So that's the kind of like how it should be approached. So I had a kind of like pretty elaborate deck, which is like still coming. I'm simply at slide number 25. Let me just talk about one example, and then I'll take questions. When did I start? Okay, it's been 15 minutes. So let's take a look at example case studies now. So what are the common big problems in the past and companies who have solved them? So the first common problem and the companies who have solved them is images, video, and audio. So this company, everybody knows this thing, Photoshop, their entire suite of the products was about solving this problem in the space of image, video, and audio. Right? Now, the trend which is in present, which is smartphone, 4G, cloud, and AI, it has actually changed how these big problems will be solved. So before these problems were solved, let's say with help of PC. So it was like, just a second. Yes. So this was the laptop versus cell phone. So using point and shoot and DSLRs, there were solutions which were pretty expensive. pretty popular. Company had a huge business plan which was based completely on top of them. And now the current problem has changed. Now, because of cell phones and ubiquity of cell phone, nobody needs that much precise editing, which is pixel perfect, because anyway, the end consumer device is a cell phone and the capturing device is a cell phone. The editing device is also cell phone, maybe internet, maybe cloud, but most of it is happening on device. So how do I adapt? How do I change my solution? And how do I choose my product accordingly? How do I develop that so that my product is popular? That's how I should be thinking. So you see, when we are trying to learn AI, instead of simply thinking as a developer and who is going to develop the problem which is being asked for him to solve, we can actually start thinking as a owner. We can start reflecting in a critical way on a problem which we are asked to solve. So this is what my kind of like session was about, wherein I'm asking you to just bring into notice different factors. So a factor like this. So let's say if I take these three things, what are the current players in this market for current trend? So for image editing, it's obviously ubiquitous Instagram. For video, it is TikTok. For audio, I don't know what is the current product. And I think podcasts are becoming popular, but not as popular that they are to the level of TikTok or Instagram. So these are the current big players. Now let's think about the product here. So when I have a problem, when I think about a product which is trying to solve a problem, these are the three things I think. What's the problem? What are the features of the product? And what's my target audience? So if I use this framework, okay, so let's say what is the problem? So I think it's not going to be ABCD. These are all four things. So I could have a problem. I have a solution of that problem, which is solved with help of my product. And these are the features of the product and my target audience. So it's going to be most likely maybe problem comes first, then target audience, then the product, and the features. Maybe it depends. So if I take a product called as Google Photos, what's the problem it is trying to solve? Archival of photos. It's a one place to store all of the photos. It is not for organization, it is for archival. If I take a look at Picasso, which was Google product, you might have used it maybe 10 years back if you know, but that was an organization product. Right now, Google Photos is not an organization. It is a plain archival product. It has AI features, but it is actually an archival product. And it is targeted for masses. So if I'm being strategic here, I could kind of like spin off the same thing, maybe same code base. I could do that. I could kind of like create spin-off of the product, which are targeting specific audience and solving their specific problem. So problem could be organization. You see, archival everybody has. Now we have too much archival. We need somebody to make sense of all of our archive. So that's a different problem we need to solve. So you see, this is how one can start thinking. This is to open up your thought process about how you could think. Let's take Instagram. So the problem is social media consumption. It has AI features, and again, target is mass. TikTok is also doing the same thing. It's just that it's kind of like being more engaging by having shorter clips and making it more fun by combining it with audio and some 2-3 features which kind of like make it more collaborative. So the collaboration aspect made it a lot more fun. So you see, the popularity was the collaboration. So the collab was the main feature, not AI. The AI was simply used to implement the feature, but it was not the whole thing. The whole thing was all about collaboration. So this is what a successful product actually offers. A successful product offers a problem solved in an easy to use way. So kind of like whenever I'm thinking about a product, you should be thinking, okay, am I solving one problem Or is my product solving all the problems? If it is solving one problem, I need to be specific. If it is trying to solve all the problems, I need to be very generic. If I'm only solving one problem, I have to do lots of user study. What's the exact segment of the audience whose problem I'm solving? If I'm trying to solve all the problems, then I have to create a suite of all the products which are going to solve my problem. So you see, it's a pretty complex thought process here, and I hope you kind of like got what I was leading up to. I was simply talking about how one can frame their own thinking to think about all the day-to-day product they sell. So example of one product trying to solve all the problem is Photoshop. Whereas if we think about, let's say, a product which is solving a subset of a problem, it is Instagram. So that was kind of like, my point of view towards it. I actually saw a few questions on how to start the AI stuff. For that, let me simply share this thing. There is a website there is a Google Doc called as tiny.cc ml-resources. If you want to get into data science field, follow this link. These are the courses which I used to become a data scientist. So if you want to get into field of data science and your question is how do I learn it by myself, then simply open tiny.cc ml-resources. That's it. So this is the kind of like link if the question is about how do you learn it. And let me simply go back to one page and let's just simply have a Q&A. So if you want to ask some questions, I think the best place would be this. Go to this website called as slido.com, slido.com, and put in this code called as TiE. When you do that, you'll be able to ask the question and I'll be able to see those questions live here. So it is much better than going into the chat and finding individual questions. You can put in your questions here. You can upload the questions so that they are available in one place, and I'll take those questions and answer them one by one from this website called as slido.com.
So till then, people scan the barcode. We have 3 questions here.
Okay.
The first question is from Harish. Can you see it on screen, Ajinkya?
Just a second. I'll have to.
We have only 3 questions in the chat room.
Okay. So 100 number of data. What should be the cost? That's too specific of a question which I'm unable to exactly understand. So I'm going to skip question 1. Question 2 I have already answered, and question 3 is also too generic to be answered here. So I decline to answer that question here. We can go into that specifically on a separate session, let's say on a recommendation. Right now, this is more like overview for business. I don't think we can go into that here. So, wow, I deflected all 3 questions. Okay, so I don't see any questions on Slido or no questions on.
So one question, Raghav, which he couldn't answer, and I think you are the right to ask this question. If you need to pick an area to solve access challenges in current lockdown situation using AI, what top 3 problems will you solve?
So this question has, let's say, 2 assumptions. First, you are solving it as a student. Second, you are solving it as a developer. Third, you are solving it as a company. So let's go through student. So if you're solving it as a student, then your aim is different. Your aim is to get noticed, to get hired. So if you're solving it as a student, It's much better to solve a problem which will prove your worth. So on Kaggle.com, if you see on Kaggle.com, there is ranking. On the ranking, you can actually see what's your global rank. So my problem with the way AI has happened is this, is there are so many companies which are solving the same problems, and but they could be done in much better ways. So it's like I'm going on Kaggle, and here I'm going on user rankings. So currently on Kaggle, there are only less than 7,000 people who are expert. And you see this word called as expert is actually, if I'm a data science expert, so for me, this expert word is nothing but a beginner. So for an expert, for me, this is just a beginning level. So in my opinion, there should be tens, 50, tens of hundreds of thousands people at expert level on Kaggle, whereas there is only 6,000. So if you are solving a problem in this COVID lockdown, if as a student, then I would say get a rank up in at least expert rank. So this expert is compared to somebody who is new to AI, but somebody who is into the field of AI, you are still a beginner. Then target expert first, then you can think about the master afterward. And if you are into master, getting a great job or something, it's just question of inevitable. It's easily happens. So another thing is like you are a developer and you're trying to solve a problem. Now, if you are a developer and you're trying to solve a problem in this thing, now here business makes a lot more sense. So there is this thing website called as Applied AI Use Cases. So this is a website where there are more than 100, 200 use cases and different vendors, people who are doing. If you go to a use case library, in this use case library, different fields, different business matrix, different problem statements, all of this thing is actually mentioned here. So if you are solving it as a developer, actually learning how to solve a problem, that's one. And what problem is there in your current business? These two things would be a good investment to do right now. So a student should simply get recognized. A developer should learn two things: identify a problem in his industry, and second, learn to solve that problem. And third, if you are asking as an entrepreneur, then your focus becomes from a business side, wherein I would suggest you to think, take this problem itself, or maybe Y Combinator list, or taking a look at UX, how a product should be designed, created, stuff like that. And you think of a holistic picture, and you think about a product and how it can be solved. So when you identify a right problem to be solved, actually making an extremely profitable business is very easy. It's just that nobody wants to be very profitable. Everybody wants to be Amazon.
Yeah.
So if you are expecting to be Amazon, then one has to understand that there is involved a lot of luck. But if you, let's say, if you take a look at, if you remove top 10 or maybe top 10 companies, then getting into anything below top 10, it's possible for anybody as long as you target the right problem. So I answered the question for student, developers, and employees. Entrepreneurs. I hope that was useful.
Okay, so the second last question is, do you have any interesting stories related artificial intelligence decision deviating from natural intelligence? Okay, can you understand?
So yes. So the word here is, the word artificial intelligence here is a misnomer here, wherein it's we assume that it is intelligence, whereas it is not. It's simply pattern matching and prediction from the pattern. When let's say a doctor is saying, okay, you have a disease, doctor actually understands cause and effect, whereas artificial intelligence does not understand cause and effect. It simply understand pattern and the association of that pattern with something. So an interesting story with deviating for something is, this is a story which is quite popular. So story goes like this: wartime. So it was like, okay, so the study was planes which survive from enemy attacks. They were doing statistical studies. Which planes survived and which ones did not. So they found out which planes survived. Okay, so they survived that. Okay, the planes which survived, they generally were shot in this area. So they concluded planes which were shot in different areas, they died because of that area. So whereas in reality, it has nothing to do with the location it was shot. The main reason of which plane survived and which one didn't was if they were shot near fuel area, the plane exploded immediately. So the conclusion which you draw is very important. It has to involve logic. So there is a study wherein, if number of deaths in sea increase with ice cream sell. Simple correlation is in summer, people have more vacations. That's why more people go to sea. That's why because more people go to sea, they swim more and the deaths increase. So there is very indirect cause correlation. There is no cause. So if there are many AI stories in which a wrong conclusion cause effect was drawn, whereas it was not really possible. So whether it is like earthquake prediction or even in Corona thing, there will be lots of companies which will make different predictions, and all of those predictions will be found out to be wrong after all of this thing dies, figures out in, let's say, next 3 months. So understanding this thing, AI is not intelligence, it is simply pattern matching. The buzzword is misleading, and let's not get carried away in the buzzword. So the first fluid AI which we were talking about, you see, a human who was intelligent, he would have understood cause and effect and made a decision. AI system is getting better accuracy because of pattern matching, not intelligence. That's important to know. It is not intelligence, it is pattern matching. That's it.
Makes sense now. Okay, so we have last question. Can you share your email ID?
Any questions, right? Please to ask me is on LinkedIn. I'm approachable on LinkedIn. So that's the best place to reach.
So we don't have any more questions. Thank you so much, Ajinkya, for
Thank you.
the session. I will love to have you more in future, more sessions with you in future. And tomorrow, guys, tomorrow we have another session with Dr. Aisha. She is from Hinduja Hospital. And the session will start from 11 o'clock in the morning. And it is a AMA session on Ask Me Anything on COVID-19. So I'd love to have you guys tomorrow. Thank you so much for attending this session. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye.